How's it? I'm Alex McCauley.
I'm Max Fosberg.
And I'm Erica Krause.
And this is Excuse the Intermission, a discussion show surrounding death's design. Final Destination Bloodlines is killing it at the domestic and international box office, far surpassing any expectations that anyone could have had for the film's financial success. Where does it rank among the storied franchises best? That will be for us to decide on this rankings episode as we dive into the Final Destination series and talk about our favorite kills, our favorite performances, and whether or not this collection of horror films harbors a hidden gem of a lost horror sequel. All that up next on the other side of this break. All right, gang, here we stand. We're putting the pieces together. After seeing the premonition that Final Destination Bloodlines would rip, we planned for a few weeks that we would do this episode, but there's so much more to understand and unpack now that the film has opened at over $100 million worldwide. So how did we get here? Can death be stopped? Why did this horror franchise pop off? What's going on? How are you guys doing today?
I'm good. I'm crazy news about this new Final Destination. I didn't know that it was pulling in that much, but
it did 5 million yesterday on a Monday. Like it's killing. It's kicking ass.
Interesting. Yeah, when I told my dad I was seeing it the other day, he was like, "Oh yeah, I want to see it. I've heard it's good reviews," and so I don't know. Interested. I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back. Something we always talk about on this podcast is that horror is evergreen. Horror it brings the people out. It's a genre that usually always works. Somehow we found Final Destination as its only big release here on a weekend in May, and I think it's just good timing. I also think when was the last time a Final Destination movie came out? Was it 14 years ago?
2011.
Yeah. So 14 years ago was the last Final Destination, and I remember that one. I believe that one did okay and is kind of revered as one of the better of the six as far as like the kills go. I remember a really memorable escalator kill in that one.
I think that's in 4, actually.
Is that in 4?
Thinking of, yeah.
Okay. Well, it's pretty wild to see that, but also like very encouraging, right? Is this another? I think this is another WB property as well. Actually, in fact, I'm pretty sure it is because all the other movies are on HBO Max. So now Minecraft, Sinners, Final Destination, Bloodlines. WB is having a hell of a year. That
is a great start. And yeah, I think you hit on something with the timing, right? Because across a lot of the USA, at least, where this film did over $50 million domestically, you had a lot of high school seniors graduating this past weekend. So you had a lot of young people, I think, out looking for things to do, which doesn't always mean that you're going to go to the movies like you did maybe back when we were in high school in the early 2000s. Of course, you can go further back in the 90s or something like that. But still, young people need something to do. And this new generation has not had a Final Destination movie yet. And so whether they have watched the previous films on HBO Max, and I love that we're back to HBO Max. I never called it Max. I know we joked around with our own Max.
I finally won my suit.
Your defamation clause. So yeah, it's whether or not people have come to the franchise through it being like passed down to them, older siblings maybe, or just watching on streamers. I think that the timing was right for this. And now we can maybe get into at the end of this conversation what franchise we think might try to hop on the gravy train of, hey, it's been 10 years. Hey, it's been 15 years. Is it time for us to bring something back? But this did just feel like the perfect time with us right on the precipice of summer. There's some huge releases coming down the pike as far as this next weekend and the weekends to come. And so I do think that with it being kind of a quiet week, we're still post centers. You know, the teenage date night crowd needed something like this in between all the family activity that's been happening at the box office this spring, between the Minecraft movie and Lilo and Stitch is coming out this week, which will be another big draw, I think, for families. So this was kind of one for us. This was one for the younger generation, the younger crowd, and you just love to see it. Like $100 million worldwide. Never could have predicted this.
Yeah, and kind of I mean, you know, these movies, Final Destination movies, if we want to start, you know, talking about the franchise and the films as a whole, and this film, Bloodlines, these movies are B movies, right? Like what they are about is how wild or creative or shocking the kills are, right? It's all about the kills. Opposed from like maybe one or two actors that have been in these movies, no one ever really is like a star, right, of the silver screen, or even like goes on to really do a whole lot. But they are somehow like just like perfectly bad. Is kind of how I can describe it. Like they are, while you're watching it, you sometimes groan, but you're also like laughing your head off, or you're just locked in. You can't turn away.
I mean, I was asking myself a lot this past week when going back and watching this, is like watching these different movies. Like, is this a real film? Is this a real movie? Are these real people in these movies? Because you're right, you really don't have any like household recognition as far as names or faces go. Nobody from this franchise has really gone on to do much outside of, like you said, a handful of actors. And so you can just kind of watch them in a vacuum. Now, I do think it's going to be interesting to talk about the extended universe that the Final Destination movies have created within themselves, because there are a lot of through lines that connect the different movies, just like random things, like the brand of a beer, like Heiss Pale Ale. I don't know if you guys have noticed that, but Heiss, H-I-C-E, Heiss Pale Ale is in every single movie. People drinking that. The number 180 comes up a lot in all of these movies, and that goes back to the first one. It's Flight 180, right?
Right. Isn't the end of Final Destination 5? Doesn't it lead into Final Destination? The first one?
That's what it implies.
That's insane.
Yeah.
You just gave away like a huge spoiler alert to number 5, by the way. That's like a huge plot twist.
Which came out in 14 years ago.
I just watched 5 for the first time just like 2 hours ago. And everyone was like, the ending is so good, and I had no idea. And then I was like, oh no shit, I thought that was kind of cool.
So you can air your grievances out with Max on this one.
No, it's fine.
No, not you, but anyone who then turns to Final Destination 5. Okay, so what is sort of the two of you? What is your history with the Final Destination movies? Is there any certain one that means something specific to you? Where do they kind of live in your estimation?
I mean, this is like our generation's horror too. I mean, the first 3 came out. Well, the first one came out when it was 2000.
Yep.
And then the second and third one were probably like middle school, high school years. And I feel like I do remember very vividly seeing the second and third one and like renting those at home, and probably came to the first one maybe later, just amongst renting on a weekend. But you know, my relationship with them, I never really liked these movies, to be totally honest. It's just not really it's not my type of horror. And you know, I think even from the beginning I didn't really take them too seriously. However, I would say the second and third one had such an impact on not only me, but our entire generation of just very infamous scenes, right? And especially the second one with probably, arguably, the most impactful opening scene / kill of them all, with the log truck. I think that is something that has lasted in most of like millennials' brains since we've seen it the first time. So while I don't personally have like much of an interest in these films, I think that I do have like a pretty long history, just because I can remember watching them for the first time and being like, I just thought it was just over the top and just a fun time,
Yeah. The log truck is death's truck, right? I mean, that thing keeps coming back almost in all of the movies after number 2. It pops up.
I would argue that the truck is the log truck from the premonition opening in number 2 is not only the most, I think it's easily the most iconic piece of imagery from this franchise, but I would put it up there with almost any opening in any horror film from the last 25 years from this century, really.
Yeah, it's a fantastic way to start off your film, and again, just like such a creative and iconic imagery with that log truck, and especially for people like us who grew up in Washington, right? I always think about that. Like, there's probably a whole part of the country that's never even seen a log truck in real life, and maybe doesn't even think those are real. But those are definitely things we, grew up seeing all the time.
And you've definitely driven behind one too, and moved out of the lane.
Yeah,
to get away from it.
Max, on your drive down to Los Angeles, you sent Erica and I a picture.
That's right, you did.
And you said the first Final Destination truck of the trip.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. These movies, they remind me of like my hot topic era, right? Like, I mean, they're nostalgic just in like the font on the poster.
Yes.
They remind me so much of like a 12, 13-year-old, 14-year-old, great gateway horror, right? For any young person who wants to get into horror. Because again, they're almost like disaster movies, but then with Saw, mixed in, right? Or torture movies mixed in. So yeah, I know I've definitely have seen all 6 of them at least once. The first like 2 or 3 I've seen multiple times. 4 and 5 I'm a little less familiar with, but I mean 4's got a great opening too with the NASCAR and like just a ridiculous hokey, like that is I think also known as like the worst one in the series, and the CGI is horrendous. But like the amount of runaway tires that fly into the stands and just like
bounce and bounce
take people's heads off. It's simply amazing. It's like Looney Tunes. It's like rated R Looney Tunes, and I find them again just like perfectly bad.
They're endlessly entertaining, I think. 1 and 2, as they have lived on HBO Max for a long time now, are perfect background movies that I love to just pop on if I'm working from home or cleaning the house, whatever it may be. So I really hold those 2 near and dear. I kind of watch them as one movie. I think that those are the easiest of the 2 to sort of sandwich together. And that's obviously thanks in large part to the Ali Larter character and also just how that second film is connected with the first film, because that's another thing that the extended universe does a really good job of. It's not like these events, these death defying circumstances of evading your fate happen in a vacuum and there isn't some shared history among the characters. Like, it always comes back to like, oh, well, this is a lot like what happened with those students that were on their trip to Paris. And so there is that connection. And then, of course, you have the Tony Todd character, who is kind of the stand-in for death, but he's also always the one who is helping our characters along their way, at least kind of realize the reality of their situation. And he plays someone who's always working in a coroner's office, who's surrounded by death for the extent of his time in these films. I think 4 is the only movie that he does not show up in Bloodlines. And I guess we should maybe start with just sort of our impressions of Bloodlines, and then we can work our way into our rankings here. But Tony didn't look great in Bloodlines. I almost wasn't sure if it was him at first.
Well, it was his last performance.
Yeah. And so because RIP, of course. But like, you can just tell that, like, I don't know. I'm not saying that there was maybe some, de-aging or CGI look there, but sure. He just looked very thin. You could tell that this was, I actually didn't know that it was his last performance, so that makes a lot of sense now.
Yeah, he had cancer.
Yeah. Because he's such a big hulking presence. You think about him as Candyman, or his performances, I should say, in these other films. But so it was good to see him kind of pop back up in Bloodlines. But let's talk about that movie. It obviously was a huge success at the box office. I think that people are very entertained by it. Once again, I'm not seeing anybody say that it is the number one film within the franchise or one of the best horror films of the 2020s or anything like that. But what did you guys think about the story that we got here in Bloodlines?
Max, you could go first.
I mean, I cackled and howled all the way through, right? From the beginning, the opening sequence where we're on a knockoff Space Needle.
The whole movie feels very Pacific Northwest, actually.
Oh, so yes, absolutely. They're definitely in Washington State.
They filmed it in Vancouver.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It was it was bad, but like, again, like, incredibly fun. Like, there are moments that are just, spellbindingly stupid, or like characters that just like disappear, or weird scenarios. This family that we're following around all of a sudden has like we've gone to like 3 funerals in a row, and we're still just all hanging out in the living room, with the lines of string on the wall, trying to be like, no, this is the order, death, like there's
and half the people are like, this isn't really happening. You're crazy.
And then, I thought there were some great kills throughout the, there's a sequence in a hospital with like an MRI machine that goes to research level and like becomes a huge magnet, which, again, like, this isn't science. We're not here for science. This isn't exact science. And then I don't want to spoil anything, but like the ending, the very end sequence, right? And all these movies definitely end a certain way. And like, this was ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous that, this happened in this little suburban neighborhood. So I don't know. I had a really good time. I don't know. It seemed like there was like one other couple in the theater that was having a really good time with me, and laughing a lot and clapping. And there's always a little bit of, some of these kills can get you a little bit like, give you the shivers, but I enjoyed myself.
Erica, what did you make of the Bloodlines approach to it? I guess would be a good place to start, in how the story tried to now make death's curse almost a hereditary thing. Did that work for you?
No, it didn't. I'm sorry. I mean, it, like I said, these movies really are not my cup of tea, and it's just because of how bad the acting is. It's like I mean, I've said this so many times on here, like you'd think I'm a like wannabe acting coach or something, considering how much I pick apart everyone's acting, but it will make or break a movie for me. And obviously the acting has never been the whole point of any of these movies, but it's just, it had been so long since I'd seen one of these, and the bloodline thing just made it cringier, I think. Like I don't know. I just didn't really love that aspect. I thought like the whole grandma thing was kind of odd, and I don't know. It just didn't really I don't know. I didn't really care for it, I guess. I didn't really like the movie, to be totally honest. It felt really, really bad. Like, I don't know. Sorry.
I think the acting never helps these movies. It can certainly provide that awesomely bad, perfectly bad quality that I think Max is referring to. But like, I was just trying to look up whoever plays the dad, the father to our main girl, the girl played by Caitlin Santawana in this film. He's terrible. The dad is
so bad.
Like, sir,
yeah,
the younger
you're
brother.
Professional. You are a professional this line reading to feel less wooden. But then on the other hand, you know, what we do have are just like some insane kills, and the kills have good effects tied to them. I will say, and I mentioned this to Max, that I thought a lot of the background of the movie, a lot of the green screen looked like Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow. It looked like, and I think that like the Wachowski Speed Racer is like far and away better than this, but it just looked like hyper real. It looked too fake to even be considered something that would be in our world or any other world. And Max made the good point when we were talking off mic about this, that maybe that was for adding that hyper realism to the premonition at the beginning, but also we talked about it's probably just a budgetary constraints.
But also it's just bad.
Yeah, you don't have the visual effects crew from Oppenheimer working on Final Destination Bloodlines and
6. Yeah.
And that's to be expected, right? But no, I mean, I thought that there were definitely some good kills. Once we get to the rankings for this film, I'll kind of unveil what I think is my favorite kill from this movie. But some good tension. You're right, that MRI scene was crazy. And every single time we get a new Final Destination movie, I'm excited to see the settings in which we're going to have a death scene, because these movies are very digestible. For as like poor as they may be in certain aspects, like the creativity, I feel like is never lacking. And here we are in number 6, and I'm watching it in my theater thinking, how have we not done a tattoo piercing parlor yet? You know, like, and how have we never involved, you know, in one of the films we have like an eye exam room where we start to dabble in some medical equipment. But then again, like I see that MRI machine in this one. I'm like, how have we never really had like a big hospital scene yet? I guess in Final Destination 2, there's a hospital scene as well. But just anytime they involve a new something to assist in death's design, I'm always like, this is great. How have we not done this before? Can't wait to see where this goes wrong. And these movies always have, and Final Destination Bloodlines is no exception. They always have a really perverse sense of humor about them. I don't think it's too big of a spoiler to say that when this MRI machine does turn into a giant magnet in this film, we find out that one of our characters has his privates pierced. And that is a very, very funny moment. And so just when things like that happen in these movies, I can't help but just think like only in a Final Destination movie, you know?
It's schlock, man. It is good old fashioned schlock.
I think what would make these movies better for me is that if they were a little bit more self-aware, and I kind of assumed that this new one would be a little bit like that, because there's a trailer for this movie that pretty much shows the entire tattoo studio scene. And you're watching it, and then, you know, our guy, he's like, he puts on, it's like Eric's sad playlist, and he starts tattooing dad on him. And I thought that was like, they're so not like, this is very campy, and I loved that. And I was like, that seems like I would like to keep that tone more of like almost like Cabin in the Woods type of feel, where they're like
in on the joke.
On the joke, like all the actors are in on the joke.
More
And
comedy.
and more of like, we're being over the top on purpose, and it's more of like this like humor that you know, you got to really pay attention to, kind of thing. And it's, I don't know, I just was thinking about that watching a lot of these movies, because they're all pretty bad, except for, I would say the second and third one are really like really on par with the time that they came out with, that they came out in. But I was like, just thinking about that with this new one, I'm like, it would just be so much. I just assumed that it was almost going to be a little bit like more like making fun of itself, because these movies are known for being pretty corny. And I was that whole the tattoo scene, I did really like that.
I do think you're right, though, because if they would have stuck with the tone of that tattoo scene throughout the film, and even like I'm thinking of when this sister has her encounter with Death, the female cousin to our main character, that's a very funny, campy scene where they are almost being self-aware and saying, oh no, watch out for this thing over here. Watch out for this guy with the leaf blower. And they're in on the joke. But then 10 minutes later, we're back in that living room, and it's like they're trying to be Kramer versus Kramer again or something, and have this real intense family drama. And it's like, I'm sorry, it's not Marriage Story. Like, it's not
we gotta pick a
that.
tone.
It's not that deep.
Yeah. And I think it would be such a like more exciting franchise if it was a little bit, or if at least if they could have turned the corner, you know, almost 15 years later with this new movie and been like, hey, look, like, our movies in the past don't have great reviews, but they're iconic. And, you know, unless you've been living under a rock, you know what Final Destination is. Let's bring this back all the way around, and let's make a joke out of it, because it already is kind of jokey. And let's just make it like wild. You know, the monkey is very has a lot of Final Destination tones, and it has that like almost over the top jokey feeling to it, where you're like, it feels smarter. But yeah, I would have liked to see them do something like that with this one.
Yeah, I think the one thing that you have to be careful with parody, once you get to parody, and especially when you're parodying yourself or any sort of franchise, you know, that kind of signals the end, right? Like, that is like, we have kind of run out of everything we want to do, so we're going to make a joke of ourselves. And yeah, so I'd rather see. I feel like everyone, the audience and the movies are in on the joke. Like, there's unintentional comedy, but it's almost like at this point it's like very intentional. But yes, these movies are very stupid. They're so stupid, and again, I just hope they keep, if they're going to continue to pump these out, which I'm sure they will after this weekend. You know, I like the seriousness.
Well, I was just going to say, there's something to be said about the direction that we have ended up going and where the franchise currently sits, because the first film is very high concept. It's taken very serious, and the kills are made to be more of this very intricate, unfortunate circumstance that really makes you then, I feel like all these movies can do this, but it was really after that first movie where I think people started to second guess themselves every time they turned on their oven and heard a strange noise, or like walk out into a crosswalk without looking both ways. Like there was all of a sudden so much to be said about how every little thing that we do during our daily routine could ultimately have an impact on our fate. And I think that that is still such a high concept for a film. And I it's interesting that we've gone away from that and I think it's great to have this balance because we can't just have everything be elevated, right, in the horror genre. And so I think it's great to have this camp and this schlock sort of like reserved for this franchise. And I think the Saw franchise was really good at that for a while too. But that was another one that almost had this real high concept start of like, what if death became a game?
And I don't know if Saw ever got
killer.
funny. Did Saw ever get funny? Really?
Saw never got funny, but you did start to go to those movies just to see how intricate and how advanced the games would become.
That's true.
And the traps, the death traps. And so I think there's some similarities there, but it will be interesting because I don't think it's never too late, right, to change. And so I think you could return to this franchise at some point and strip it down, dial it back a lot, and turn it back into like a real dark version of people who have cheated death and now death is coming back for them. And it's not crazy CGI and it's not people getting ran over by lawnmowers, but it's like real gnarly, real gruesome, and can still be a lot of fun, but just has that different tone, something more similar to the first film.
I could have tolerated the fifth one a lot, or the new sixth one, a lot more if that CGI was not so bad. It was like really bad, and I don't know anything about that kind of stuff, but even the first scene in the Space Needle, I was like, this is so bad already.
It looks so bad.
I don't expect the acting to be great in any of these movies, like I said, but even watching, like going back to the second one, and the log scene, I mean, it looks amazing. And it's not like it looks like an early 2000s movie. And I'm like, I want that again. I don't need this, like, it just was too much in this new one. I'm like, it took me out of it so much. Whereas like I would rather see like maybe a less intricate death, but still like maybe look a little bit more realistic or something. But like, that log scene is so badass because there's like real I'm pretty sure they have real cars crashing. I mean, there's like real practical effects happening. And even the CGI that there does not look it just doesn't look too much, and without sacrificing a really iconic death scene where and it's gory and it's just over the top. Even the opening of the third one too, the roller coaster is just great. Love it.
I couldn't agree more with you, Erica. And I'm excited to get to start to talk about all of these films. So in a little bit more detail here. So what we're going to do is we're going to rank these movies. We'll go through each, say what we have at 6, work our way to number 1. I have so many other lists to go with my lists for these movies. This is a franchise that I do just have a real soft spot for. Like this would have, some of these movies would have fit perfectly into our guilty pleasure discussion that we had on Erica's episode a few weeks ago. So I also have like my favorite kills within each movie. I have these ranked by what I think my favorite premonitions are, because I think that there are some bad movies in this franchise that start with a great premonition. Max already alluded to the NASCAR scene at the beginning of the fourth one. Not a good movie, but I love that premonition. So a lot of different things to sort of recommend and to highlight from these different movies. We'll start though with a general ranking. So Max, let's go to you. What do you have as your number 6 Final Destination film?
I have the Final Destination, which is Final Destination 4 at number 6.
As do I.
As
Yeah.
do I.
Okay, great.
Just a weak movie overall. The worst CGI.
And this was in 3D, wasn't it? It
That
came
was
out
like
in
the gimmick for
3D.
this one.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, it was very and it's only like 73 minutes, something like
very
that.
short.
It's
a very short film. And it's funny because these films all do follow basically the same, they have to, right? By design, no pun intended. They have to follow the same formula, movie after movie, where X amount of people evade death, cheat death at the beginning. And then, once that person then has their standalone scene, that scene's going to be their death scene. And I think there's something genius about that, really. That, like, these films cannot be that hard to write, if I'm being honest. And that probably has led to some laziness in the script and the different scripts, plural, I should say. However, there are some, I think there's some real highlights in Final Destination 4. I do think that NASCAR track opening scene is really good. And in 2009, these movies are an amazing snapshot of the year and the political climate in which they came out, because for 2009, this movie in a few different ways has aged so interestingly and so poorly. Like, there is just some overt racism in this fourth film.
Oh yeah.
That makes no sense. One of the characters just starts out, he's got a swastika tattoo on his arm. He's at the racetrack. He's getting called a redneck. He is spewing racist remarks left and right. Just something that would never be in a movie, as sort of like, not necessarily a joke, but you would just never have that archetype, that type of character in a movie right now. So that's not the best. As I mentioned, it's the only movie without Tony Todd. Another thing that these movies do interesting is that they exist without the trope of having a finals girl, or in some cases a finals guy, because it's not always a girl or a guy that has the premonition. You really never know who it's going to be. So our lead actor in this movie, his name's Bobby Campo, and he's the one who has the premonition that a car is going to blow a tire after a series of unfortunate random occurrences, and create this giant crash that leads to, yes, I love the way you said it, Max. It's like very Looney Tunes-esque collapse of this entire racetrack, really.
Yeah, earthquake happens
where cement is falling on people, and it's just like everything is just it might as well be animated, some of those sequences of these giant blocks flattening people like pancakes. This movie does have a fun double premonition at the end, and that's where you do get that escalator scene that you were mentioning, Max. So I do want to give it credit for that. And then I will say, I think this movie even though I have it at 6, I have the premonition ranked as the 4th best premonition in the series, but I think it has a top 3 kill. This movie has a top 3 Final Destination kill in it for me. Do you want to guess which one I think that is?
Is this the tanning beds?
No, it's not the tanning beds. That is also a top 3, maybe top 5 kill for me. I'm talking about the pool drain kill.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
In this one. Incredible stuff. Incredible stuff, where a character goes swimming in a public pool that has had its drain turned on by death, and my guy is ass down on the pool drain as it sucks out his insides, which we then see erupt out of the water system, the pipes of this pool. Incredible stuff. And one of those moments where, when you're watching these films, not every death can you feel, but that's one where, like, your body winces. And so I do have to give the Final Destination, the 4th film, some credit. All right, Erica, what's your number 5, since we're all in agreement on 6?
Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, I was muted. I have Final Destination 6 as my number 5.
I also have Bloodlines as my number 5.
I also have Bloodlines as my number 5.
Okay.
So Erica, what was your favorite kill in Bloodlines?
My favorite kill was not even a kill. Like, it's the tattoo scene. That really was like,
a good
that
fake
was what?
It's a good fake out.
It is a good fake out. I thought that was the most well done, but I'm trying to like I did really like the MRI scene. I thought that one was like kind of like, oh God, that was jarring, but the tattoo scene was so fun to watch. And like, the one that I really wanted to be true, I guess. I mean, I don't know. Like, that whole thing, it flowed really well. I thought like the campiness of the whole thing was fun, but and I don't know if that counts because it's not really a kill, but yeah, the MRI scene, I guess, too, was pretty good.
I want to give some love to the trash compactor sequence where our main character is like calling out exactly how the death is going to happen, right? Like the tree trimmer that's leaning up against the tree, the leaf blower, the kids with the soccer ball, and they think it's going to happen to
the older cousin.
Yeah, our piercing bud, and instead, and then it doesn't happen, right? And then the younger sister, goes out for a run, and exactly that happens, and she's stuck in this trash compactor, and her head, like a watermelon, just gets squished, and they show it to you. I mean, they stay on her, and it's bad CGI, but at the same time, I was like, oh my God, we're squishing heads. We're squishing heads.
And pulling off limbs. I did love that prosthetic. Again, it looked very rubber and noodly.
Totally. Yeah.
But gnarly at the same time. I want to give a shout out to the barbecue scene and specifically like the tease of the shard of glass. Because that was really well done and created a lot of anxiety and tension for me when I was watching, where I was sitting up in my seat because I was thinking, if someone, without giving away too many spoilers, a shard of glass is incognito amongst a big tub of ice, and you see it get scooped up into a drink, you don't know who gets the drink that has the shard of glass in it yet. So there's some real mystery as to how this shard of glass is going to play a role in someone's death. And there's a lot of other things going on. And that's another calling card for this franchise, is that there will be so many tiny little things introduced into a scene. And so you're not ever sure what's actually going to be the main trigger that leads to someone's death. But this shard of glass, I'm just thinking of someone swallowing that with their drink and it landing, or maybe not landing, but in it traveling down your throat, and how gruesome that could be. It doesn't end up playing out that way. There is still a scene that involves a moment that involves the shard of glass at this barbecue that then leads to someone meeting their demise via another tool. But that whole scene I thought was pretty well done. It kind of the family barbecue.
Yeah, there's also like a trampoline involved, which again, just like a great, anxiety inducing moment.
With like a rusty rake underneath, and the camera keeps cutting to the trampoline fabric, stretching and ripping and getting closer and closer to snapping. So some good stuff there. But okay, sounds like we're in agreement with 6 and 5. I'll go first here with number 4, and this is where I have Final Destination 2. This hurts me because I actually have this as my favorite premonition, and this is of course the log truck premonition. It's the whole highway crash at the beginning. I love Ali Larter coming back in this franchise and really tying it to the first one. Like I said, AJ Cook, who's my girl from Criminal Minds, she's one of the only actors that has actually continued on and had quite a bit of success post appearing in a Final Destination movie. So got to give AJ Cook a shout out. Ali Larter, of course. However, this movie, once you get past, I think it's just because the high of that premonition scene is so great. Once you get past that, the other characters just really aren't that interesting. You have the mother, teenage son that have a really odd dynamic together. I do love the son getting flattened by the plate glass window. That's I think my favorite kill from this movie. But like the pregnant woman, the woman who's like the 30-year-old kind of like go getter businesswoman type, and then you have the stoner kind of metalhead guy. There's just like nobody that I really get attached to in this movie. Whereas I think some of the other movies to come have a little bit more meat on the bone as far as story goes and character development, for as silly as that sounds in a Final Destination movie. But for those reasons, although I love the premonition, like I said, have it rated number 1. And shout out to AJ Cook and Ali Larter. But I have Final Destination 2 in my 4 spot.
In my 4 spot, I have Final Destination 5. Okay. And part of the reason is that I think I've only seen this movie once, so the rewatches aren't there for me yet. I don't know it as well as some of the as these next 3 on my list, but I just remember it being, again, kind of like similar to 4, where some of the effects and the CGI is overdone. I believe this was another attempt at 3D glasses in a Final Destination movie, and a little melodramatic, which is kind of funny. Funny to like nitpick in a Final Destination movie. But whereas Alex, you were just saying you can't really get behind anyone in 2 or get connected to anyone in 2. I feel that with 5, whereas 2, 3, or 3, 2, and 1, I'm along for the ride with all those characters and can get behind them.
What's in your 4 spot, Erica?
I also have Final Destination 5.
Okay, so Final Destination 5 is my 3. I'm happy, Final Destination 5 is in my 3 spot.
Yeah.
So I'm happy sliding that down to 4, in aligning with you guys. I do want to give 5 some credit for the melodramatics of it. And I think that there's a real attempt to have a few scenes in this movie that aren't just segues into another character's death. Like, I do think that it's really smart to show all of the characters in their office after our cell phone guy is at the acupuncture massage parlor or whatever, and he's having the
Buddha kill.
Yeah, he's having his death scene. That could just be sort of by itself, but they intercut it with everyone else like getting drunk at work because they're all grieving and they don't know how to handle it. And I'm like, this is kind of solid. And once again, they're drinking the Heist Pale Ale, so I love it. It's a moment to like connect the extended universe. And so I do like that they just like show us a few scenes like that the best friend of our main guy, played by Nicholas Diosco, he who's the one that kind of has the double crossing. And I like that as well. Like there's kind of the double crossing, like someone sort of goes to the dark side and really buys into this idea of like, what happens if I kill someone else to take a life and take their place? And so I feel like the expanded community and everything else in 5 just makes a little bit more sense than it does like in 2. Like, I appreciate the police investigation that's going on in 5 a lot, and how the one detective is like, this is all so fucking weird. Like, in none of these other movies do we have a police officer who is really like, no, there's something like that needs to be investigated here. I need to continue to talk to these these young people about these deaths that keep occurring within their friend group, and to these people who were involved in this accident at the beginning. So I just like all of that stuff. I do like too that he's trying to get his ratatouille on and go to Paris and become a chef. And the dinner scene that he has with his girlfriend is actually like pretty endearing. Like, again, it's funny to think that a Final Destination movie can, aside from maybe the first one, like pull off some character development, but I feel like this movie really does have it, actually, more so than a lot of the others. So that's why I give 5 a top 3 spot. But like I said, happy to move it down to the 4 spot to hang there with you guys. I do love the gymnastics accident in this movie a lot, because that is another great, like, pull the rug out from underneath you kill scene, where we have become so conditioned to think that the raising temperature in the room, which leads to some water dripping out of a pipe, which leads to a spark on an electrical cord, is going to have something to do with this character's death, when really all it is like a big bowl of like rosin chalk that gymnasts would use to help their grip gets blown into a fan, blinds a girl who's on the bars. And when her body snaps when she hits the mat, it's incredible stuff. Like, great stuff. And also Olivia's eye exam in this one. Olivia, who's kind of like the edgy hot chick in this movie, she decides to go in to get like LASIK surgery done, which again, just like a great snapshot of the time in 2011 for someone to go in to have like laser correction surgery done on their eye. And I mean, like, Max, I know this for you, you're a big eye person in horror movies when it comes to like grotesquerie. And so I love that scene because it's so gnarly. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm a team player. I will move 5 down to 4, but I think 5 is really, really solid.
Yeah, you're making me want to go back and rewatch it now. Just because, again, that's the one I've seen the least.
And David Kochner is so goddamn funny in everything he's in, of course, but especially in like the cold open, if you will, the premonition scene where he's looking at our main character and he goes, "Look at me. What's my name?" And he's like, "Dennis." And he's like, "Now look away." Like, he is just the biggest asshole boss, and he's so good at it. He plays that kind of character so well. So yeah, Final Destination 5, I would almost make the case for this as being the Lost Horse sequel within the franchise, because I think it has a lot to appreciate, and outside of the trappings of the franchise to begin with, just like spotty CGI and bad acting here and there, like, I think it's pretty flawless, to be honest.
Well, that sounds like it deserves a re-examination on my part, for sure.
So then what is at your 3 spot, the two of you?
So this is where I have Final Destination 2 at.
Interesting. I have the first Final Destination on this one. And that is personal preference, but yeah, I like it.
Right.
You even with the Devon Sawa of it all?
You guys need to let that go, because that was just
we did not start this fire.
Well, that was a different time. I was 3, and also he was much younger.
We can't hold what she said at 3 years old against her.
Devin reached puberty. I didn't even know. First of all, I didn't even know what his name was when I first saw Casper. Just mind you, that he was like a little bit older crowd. Like, the girls were loving Devin. I didn't know any better, so I didn't pay attention to him after Casper. So let's just set the record straight. But no, the first one, it's good. This is not a movie that I saw like when it came out. I was 8 years old when this movie came out, and I'm sure I watched this movie until many years later watching it. The second and third one are much more impactful to me just culturally, but I think that it's obviously a really great movie. It's what sets the entire franchise up, obviously. It deserves recognition. It's just not my favorite one, but some really solid kills. The airplane sequence doesn't really do a whole lot for me.
Well, it's a really interesting sequence because this comes out in 2000, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
literally a year later.
This is a huge
This-
part of why I think this movie's so important.
Yeah, it would never exist. Because as we all know, a year later was 2001, in which, you know, the life in the
What
US
happened, Max? What happened?
took a turn. There was a terrible attack on New York City. So yeah, I think the first one is really important, and kind of I liked what Alex was saying earlier about it, how it is high concept and very like stripped down and compared to where we go with the franchise, right? Even though like a lot of the zany and wacky and fun of Final Destination, especially in the later movies, is from again these Looney Tune kills. The first one is such a, it's almost more of a thriller rather than like one of these like, you know, it's almost like what kill porn, which is like its own kind of genre or whatever. So I have two here because again, two, you know, I think of a lot of what helps to get into the top three is that opening sequence. However, a lot of it after that, as opposed to actually, there's one kill in two that I think is probably my favorite kill, which is the hot rod guy in his kitchen getting the hand stuck in his garbage disposal.
Yes.
Because that has been just like a major fear of mine since I was a child, since I knew what a garbage disposal was. And also, again, just like a great fake out, right? As soon as he gets his hand stuck in there, you're like, oh, we're going to have, you know, finger linguine here in a little bit. He ends up getting it out. Then his apartment gets on fire. So now you're thinking he's going to be charred. He ends up getting out, and we get down to the bottom of the alleyway, and then a ladder comes down.
The fire escape ladder.
Yeah.
Also, another amazing sequence too, because it heavily involves the usage of an answering machine, which is so great. This character has recently won a small fortune in the local lottery. And so he has all these people hitting him up, all these chicks specifically who are hitting him up. And he is like making, I don't know, he's making like instant mac and cheese or something in his kitchen. I forget what it is, but he's just like, yeah, what did you call him? A hot rod guy? That's so funny.
Yeah. So yeah, I really, really love that kill. And
it's a great
kill. And again, 2 is like, I believe 2 came out in 2003. So yeah, I'm 13 years old when this comes out. So it does have a bit of more of a nostalgic feel to it for me, which is why it's ahead of something maybe like 5 that sounds like needs to be. I need to go back and rewatch because it could be just a better movie overall.
I mean, the biggest indictment really that I have on 5, aside from how I said that, you know, it has the typical bad acting and spotty CGI as most of the films within the franchise do. For me, even though I had number 5 ranked at 3, I stand by that personal ranking, but I do have the premonition scene, the suspension bridge collapse, as like the fifth best premonition out of 6. I do feel like that opening sequence is pretty weak. And, you know, it's interesting enough that actually 2 of these 6 premonitions involve things that we're very familiar with. One, a suspension bridge and the collapse of a suspension bridge, and then also this Skyview Space Needle tower. So I don't know what that says about life here in the Pacific Northwest, and and even logging trucks, you know, really. But I do think that premonition scene in this second Final Destination film is the best premonition scene of them all.
Yeah. So but I have Final Destination, the first one, at my 2 spot.
Okay.
And then I have Final Destination 2 at 3. Erica, I'm guessing do you have Final Destination 2 at 1 or at 2?
I have it at 1.
I have it at 1.
I have 3 at number 2.
At 2. And Alex?
So my top 3 goes, I'll just start with 1. I have the original at number 1, and I feel like that's almost a default, and I came in here willing to flex that out because I have Final Destination 3 as my 2, and that's the one that I think is the real hidden gem of this franchise. And so I'm totally here to entertain a conversation surrounding 3 as potentially the best film in the franchise. And then I do have 5 as my number 3, with 2 on the outside looking in as far as the top 3 goes. So this is messy all of a sudden. We're just saying numbers, I feel like.
Yeah, I know, right? Who knew?
So yeah, I mean, I guess we need to figure out where we are going to place maybe Final Destination 1 here. Because it sounds to me like there's maybe room to put Final Destination, the first film in the series, in the 3 spot.
Yeah, I think it could easily. Wait, Max, where did you say you have the first one?
I have the first one at 2.
So I think it going at 2 makes sense, right?
Well, but then that what goes at we're working on number 3, right?
Well, what goes on number 3?
We need to place 1, 2, and 3 is what we need to do.
Yeah.
And now although I love the cold open that we get on that highway in the second film, I just think that number 1 overall is just such a better, well executed and original story. And so that's why almost by default I have it in the number 1 spot. But really when it's looked at in comparison to number 2, I just feel like 2 is really just like a sequel, right? It is just running it back and we're playing the hits. And I just think that, everything that we get with the teacher and Sean William Scott's, or who is it? What's his name? Yeah, Sean William Scott, right?
He's in the first one, yeah.
He's in the first one. His character in the first one, the teacher in the first one, the survivor's guilt. Like there's a lot, again, like really high concept and really emotionally aware. That first movie is. There's just so many different things. I think Ali Larter's character does a decent job in the second film, kind of exhibiting some of those emotions. But like everything that happens in that first film, I just think is like really exciting and unlike anything we had really ever seen before, except for like this one really old Twilight Zone episode that we can like get to maybe here if you guys had a chance to watch that. I don't know. I put it in our little show outline, our little notes in the text message. So I don't know if you guys got a chance to look at that, but this whole idea of like having a premonition of death, it was just so cool in 2000. So that's why I'm willing to have a conversation around 3 as potentially going number 1, but I don't think I mean, well, let's talk about it. Putting 2 above 1 feels weird to me though.
I think I'm admittedly putting number 2 at my number 1 because of the logs. That's fine. I'm not attached to this series at all. So,
well, okay.
I think that makes sense. I mean, listening to 2 people who obviously are more excited about this entire franchise than I am, I'm like,
could ever be.
I mean, you're making great cases for them. So I think that the third one, I had trouble deciding which one I liked better, the second or the third one, because those are the 2 that I watched as a kid. And, those were the most impactful, like jarring ones to me. Whereas the first one just doesn't really, I don't have any kind of history with that at all. So I think the second one could go at 3. And then number 2, the first one, and then number 1, 3. Is that what we're talking about?
I'm totally fine with this.
Yeah. I mean, that's. I have 3 at number 1. I 3, I think is kind of everything working on every level, right? And it has probably the best performance in any sort of Final Destination movie.
Mary Elizabeth Winstead is
she's wonderful, and she's leagues above anyone else. Plus, it's got the fucking kid from all those Disney original movies in it.
The Irish, dude.
Look at the Irish and the wasn't a Smart House and Wasn't he the Mermaid Boy too, or something
and
like
the other
that?
me or something maybe. I don't
Something
know.
like
No,
that.
that's one of the Lawrence brothers.
Oh, you're right.
No, he was not in the 13th year. I know
13th year. Okay, yeah,
he's not, but
it's a kid who
very
looks like him.
same timeline, same year, like era, I guess. The third one has my favorite kill, which is the
No?
tanning bed scene.
It's
Yeah.
so good.
It's
It's
my
tanning
favorite
bed's
kill of the
good.
whole franchise.
Yeah.
I think especially watching that too, growing up in an era where us girls were going tanning a lot too. And I'm very claustrophobic.
Listen, Final Destination 3. Okay, before we just get to Final Destination 3, which we're putting at our number one, Final Destination 2, we've talked about the logs. We've talked about Ali Larder. We've talked about AJ Cook. Rock solid. Final Destination 1, the original, is in our 2 spot. Devin, a king, everything else that happens in the film. Really exciting, really fun, really creative. The ingenuity, just like, had never really seen anything like it. Can we close the book on one?
Yeah.
Okay. So here we go for 3. I think that 3, you could make the argument because 2006, my God, I cannot wait till we hit the 2006 movie draft. But like, we just did this with 05. There could be the case that like House of Wax is the most 2005 movie ever made because you have Paris Hilton and you have Chad Michael Murray and just a perfect encapsulation of what was popular and hip and trendy in 2005. I think the movie that you could maybe make the case for that is like the most 2006 movie ever made is Final Destination 3. When I think of life as a 16-year-old, it is everything that you see in Final Destination 3. I love what Erica is saying about like the tanning beds. Like, I don't think that hits now. That there's no way that would hit now the way that it did nearly 20 years ago when everyone was obsessed with tanning beds, the Hollister, Abercrombie, low-rise jeans. I got, listen, Mary Elizabeth Winstead is amazing in this. I have to give a shout out to her sister, Amanda Crew. She flew too close to the sun. She could have been something. I love her as an actor from this era, this begotten era. The hardware store, like the drive-through window. So much of this movie just works. They have Razor flip phones. Just like incredible.
Ryan Merriman's hair.
And yes, exactly. Just the styles, the digital cameras. Like, I have this digital camera on loan from the yearbook, teacher, I guess. Like, and I'm taking pictures for the school yearbook. Incredible time capsule from 2006.
Yeah, it's amazing. And the roller coaster premonition is, again, like,
it's my second favorite
3.
behind the logs. Yes.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's really good, and always a thing you think about. I actually recently got onto a roller coaster for the first time in like, I don't know, probably 15 years. And, you still think about Final Destination and like, oh, I hope everything's like screwed real tight on this track here, because I don't want to go flying off into the nothing.
It's the perfect vehicle too for what we now know has been the sequential order in which death is going to come back to take the lives that were promised to him. And so I love, whereas like everything else is sort of like, it's chaotic, it's a bridge collapsing, it's a highway crash, it's a plane crash, and you have to go back and figure out, at least as an audience member, the characters obviously do themselves if they're going to try and solve kind of death's mystery puzzle here. But like, the roller coaster is such a great ladder almost for like who was in front of me and then who was behind me and who was behind me for them to go ahead and figure it out. And so I do love that. And also too, just like in 2006, that's how you shot and made a movie with a ton of extras. Like, that opening carnival sequence is really exciting to go back and watch now because there is so much going on. Like, there is a ton of production that goes into that opening sequence. And not that some of the other films don't have that as well, but except for like the train, the roller coaster cart actually going off the tracks, of course. Very little CGI, as I think Erica pointed out at the beginning. Like, to see the amusement park, the lights, the noise, the rides, everything, all the extras, as I mentioned, is just like really endearing.
Yeah, it's great. We used to go on location. We used to go find amusement parks, and we take teenagers there and shoot.
I would also say too that as much as I do love the tanning bed sequence, and it's great, it is so good. I think it's so strong that it overshadows the hardware store kill sequence as well, because that's the nail gun. It ends with the nail gun, and that's another just incredible location that when you're watching a Final Destination movie, and then the way that you go about the rest of your life, every time you step into a Lowe's or a Home Depot, you're thinking, oh my God, there are 1,000 different ways for me to die in this giant hardware store. Just like hundreds of pounds of wood and concrete and everything just stacked on shelf upon shelf above you that just is like towering over your head. And so I love that sequence as well. And so, yeah, I'm totally happy with 3 as our number 1, because I think I think we're all in agreement sort of that this is the one that is the most well-rounded.
Yeah, I think it's from head to toe the most complete. And again, like is it the hidden gem, or would you consider something like 5 the hidden gem?
Well, I mean, the way that we've sort of defined this in the past, right, is once people have maybe thought that the franchise was like dead and gone, then something comes back and breathes new life into it, right? But we've also mentioned in the past that like usually this happens with, and so that's when I think of like maybe the Paranormal Activity franchise. And I love Next of Kin, and I believe Next of Kin is like the 7th film in that franchise of the Paranormal Activity movies. And so that makes me more inclined to think like, well, Final Destination 5 after 4 was a stinker, really, comes back and surprises people. Or maybe when you go back and revisit it, you'll be surprised because you're like, oh, I thought this was done. Like, I thought we were kind of dead after 2 and maybe 3. Some people have said it's good or whatever, but then I see 4, and 4 has like a 2.1 rating on Letterboxd or something like that. But to follow suit with how things have happened in the past, it's always that 3rd movie in the franchise that brings it back. It's Nightmare on Elm Street Dream Warriors. Yeah. It's Halloween Season of the Witch. And so it makes sense for Final Destination 3, I feel like, to be the one that can be considered as good, if not better, than the original.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, I mean, obviously, I had Final Destination 3 at 1. It's just an iconic film. And the poster too, I think, also plays into it. That where the kids are all upside down on the roller coaster,
turning more ghoulish, like as they go back.
As it goes further back. I mean,
I can just, as Erica mentioned, like renting it from the video store. That is just a kind of a core memory, is seeing that box on the shelf and taking it home. So, okay, is there any room to talk about, what was it, season 2, episode 17 of The Twilight Zone, in the episode 22? Did you get to it?
I did not get to this, unfortunately.
I didn't either.
So I will just briefly explain for people who maybe want to check it out. It's, I believe right now, not only on Paramount Plus, but I think on Pluto TV and a few other free subscription type of streaming apps. You can find a lot of the Twilight Zone episodes right now. So check Pluto TV first. But this is a short, 20-minute long Twilight Zone episode about a woman who has been committed to, she's a performer, she's a dancer is how they phrase it, and she has been committed to a hospital for fatigue and like concerns surrounding her mental health. And she keeps having this reoccurring dream, this vision of sorts, that she will wake up and head down to the morgue of this hospital that she's staying in. And it's a very disturbing, very scary episode of The Twilight Zone. You know, a lot of them can be sort of supernatural. They can be almost like science fiction. Yeah. This is a scary episode of The Twilight Zone. This woman goes down to the basement, and after walking down this long hallway with some really long takes and long holds, going around corners and approaching doorways and things like that, a woman opens up the door to the morgue and says, "Room for one more." And then she snaps out of her nightmare. So she's having this dream of sort of like death and death coming for her. So then at the end of this Twilight Zone episode, she is released from the hospital and she's going to get on an airplane so that she can return to her life. And as she's walking up, this is an old airplane where you walk out onto the runway and you go up the staircase that they wheel out there for you to board the plane in that way. And as she's doing that, she's starting to see a lot of signs that she's seen from this dream that she's had when she's been staying in the hospital, all the way up until the point where she gets to the top of the staircase leading to the airplane. And the flight attendant welcomes her on the plane by saying, "Room for one more." And she freaks out and she decides, "I'm not getting on this plane." And she runs back into the airport and she's having this panic attack. The plane still takes off. And as she is in the middle of this panic attack at the gate of her where her plane's departing, her plane explodes in the sky behind you.
Yeah. Great.
Just great stuff. And I've never quite seen like, you know, an IMDb trivia fact or anything like that written about how the creators, the writers, the director of Final Destination was ever influenced by this episode of The Twilight Zone. But like, what are we talking about here? It's so similar. And so, you know, not to say that Final Destination is adapted from this episode of The Twilight Zone, but there are definitely worse ways that you could go and spend 20 minutes after you're done listening to this podcast. So I would definitely advise anyone who's interested to go search up the episode of The Twilight Zone that's titled 22.
22.
Yeah. It's good stuff. Okay, so that'll do it for a conversation on the Final Destination franchise. As for what's next here on the pod, we have a little movie from another sort of exciting franchise that's coming out this weekend. Are you guys familiar with the Mission Impossible? Yeah, a little indie. Are you familiar with the Mission Impossible movies by chance? We have The Final Reckoning, which hits theaters this Friday. And of course, that gives us a chance to return to the wonderful world of Ethan Hunt, espionage, death-defying stunts, the survival of cinema, getting out. The what?
The rabbit's foot.
The rabbit's foot, all the great things. So I don't know. What do we expect out of this? We thought we would be getting this movie last year. It was, of course, delayed. We're now back. This, I assume, is going to be our last time spending any amount with our last time spending time with Tom Cruise in the role of Ethan Hunt. So where are we at?
It's going to be really interesting. I've got my ticket set for Friday morning, 10:30 in the morning. Thank God bless the theater workers. I will be there. I'm excited to see it. I know that the runtime is quite long. And it'll be really interesting, I think, to compare it to, I was thinking about this today, No Time to Die.
Yes.
Which was Daniel Craig's last outing as Bond. And how actually well that was handled and elegantly ended and kind of wrapped up. Does Tom Cruise have the wherewithal to do that with Ethan Hunt? Or
can he walk away from this character?
Can he actually walk away?
Yeah.
And you know, I know he's got his next project is with
Inarritu. Yeah.
Inarritu, and supposedly he's he's coming back to acting, and he's really gonna kind of go for it again as far as like awards and whatnot. But can Ethan Hunt die? I think is my biggest question, and I'm gonna be really, I'm I love Mission Impossible movies. I love them. I wasn't as high as on Dead Reckoning as I was Fallout. Right?
Agreed.
I feel like 3 through 6, we were going up the roller coaster in Final Destination 3, if you will, and now we are kind of on the downtrend. So it will be really interesting to see how they wrap this up, and I hope it's good.
If you could just pick, like, gut check here before going out to the movie theater, before maybe thinking about it too much, before revisiting any of the other films, would you rather this end the way that, say, The Dark Knight Rises ends with Christian Bale's Batman, or would you rather it end with a No Time to Die, Daniel Craig, Blaze of Glory?
I want Blaze of Glory.
Okay.
I think that's what I want, because I don't want an open door. I don't want there to be able to go back. I don't want to see 70-year-old Cruise jumping out of a goddamn plane.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair. Erica, Mission Impossible. What do those 2 words mean to you?
I had no idea it was coming out so soon. I thought it was coming out this summer for some reason.
This is our Memorial Day weekend movie this year. Yeah.
I had
Summer's
no idea.
here.
I had no idea. I have not seen any of the Mission Impossible movies except for Fallout and Dead Reckoning. I loved Fallout. Dead Reckoning was fun. Fallout was my introduction to the series. And so of course I was like, this fucking rocks. But then Dead Reckoning was good. I was already like, okay, I'm in. But I don't know. I'm excited for this movie. I mean, because I'm hoping that this is the last one, because I'm always a big advocate for, like, let's just end it while you're already on top kind of thing. Like, don't overkill. So I hope that this one goes out with a bang. I'm really excited. I've seen, some of the stuff that Tom has done for this, and I have no doubt that I'll be very entertained.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I popped on Mission Impossible, the original, the other day.
Brian De Palma's Mission Impossible.
Mission Impossible. That movie is just so fucking good. It is so masterfully made. Like, it's
one of the best movies of the decade. One of the best movies of the 90s.
It's just wild. It's so incredibly entertaining.
I do believe that when Dead Reckoning came out, we did a rankings episode. So I don't think it's helpful to go back and do a whole series collective type of episode. So I'm not sure exactly how we'll quantify our discussion surrounding the film, but I'm sure there'll be, as Tom always gives us, there'll be plenty of meat on the bone here for us to stew over next week. So until next time, please follow Excuse the Intermission on Instagram, the 3 of us on Letterboxd, to track what we are watching between shows. And we will talk to you next time on ETI, where, of course, the movies still matter.